Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Kevin Jackson. It's the Kevin Jackson Show. So, did you catch the World Series? Not the World Series, the final game of the championship series between the Yankees and the Houston Astros. What an interesting series in so many ways. And here's what made it interesting, in my opinion. The Houston Astros go 2-0 at home. Then the Yankees sweep them, which is really unusual. I watched part of the first two games and thought, Houston's got this. I didn't watch the next three games. Next thing I know, the Yankees, I'm seeing the score 3. I'm like 3-2. What? So, that's how out of tune I've become to sports. So anyway, I watched game 6, and I don't know the pitcher's name, but man, Houston's pitcher, the dude is awesome. And I talked to a friend of mine who's a former professional pitcher for Detroit and a couple of other teams, ended his career in Colorado. And he said, Kevin, he goes, I watched this guy pitch a no-hitter against us in Detroit. And he goes, even though it was against us, it was amazing as a pitcher to watch this guy pitch a no-hitter. He said he pitched all 9 innings. And, the guy's got so much control. I can't remember. Verlander, I think's his name. Anyway, he says he's got such control. But he says, here's what's most interesting. The guy was throwing 101 miles per hour in the 9th inning. And he goes, our batters were coming back to the box going, what do you want us to do? He can pick his location and throw it over 100 miles an hour in the 9th inning. I said, what was the pitch count? He said it was over 100. He goes, this guy he's a beast. And game 6, crushes these guys. I think they beat him, 6-1, 7. It was a sound defeat. And the bats finally got to work for Houston. So that was game 6. And so I said, Houston's going to win it after watching that, because they were saying Houston hadn't scored in the whole series. They hadn't scored X number of runs, but that day they scored more runs than they had scored the entire time. And I said, their bats have awakened. They finally got it. We're not going to skate into this thing. So the next game, my son had a baseball game, so we're at the baseball game. And this little boy's like, Houston 1-0, Houston 2-0, Houston 4-0. And, of course, the game ended up 4-0. I didn't see it, but I saw, got the score and all that and got interested in it because it was a curiosity. Now, my son, he's kind of a Yanks fan. Not for any other reason than, like, he'll hear Aaron Judge, whatever the guy's name. I think that's his name. This guy's a beast. He hits home runs like, he makes it look simple. But and the kid is a good player. But anyway, my son, he's going to the Gold Gloves again this year, and he knows all these players. So he's rooting for New York. He's like, Kevin. He's like, Dad, who you rooting for? I said, Houston. He said, why? I said, because we're Texans. And nothing against New York. It's kind of a second home for me. Half the time I'm up there doing stuff with Fox. But long story short, they win the game. It's now going to be Houston against the Dodgers, who are supposedly got the best record in baseball from what I hear. So it should be a really good matchup. It starts on Tuesday. So I don't know. We'll see how the game goes. But I will tell you this. There's a fun thing to be interested to some degree in a sport again. And I won't get crazy. I'm not going crazy over these guys because you never know what they're going to do. It's too many social justice warriors now and all that. But right now, baseball is the only sport that's been relatively safe. And it was fun to have this sort of camaraderie. In the case of my son and I, we had this, this antagonistic thing because he was for the Yankees and I was for Houston. But to be honest with you, I don't really care. And one thing that I will tell you that I'm instilling in this kid is don't you care too much either. Because these players don't. They can go from team to team. They don't care. They're getting a paycheck. Don't you get too invested in it. But anyway, I don't know if you caught that, but it is coming up. I'm interested in the World Series. Another story that caught my eye was this 9-year-old mailed President Trump $3. And it's such a cool story because the kid learned that the president doesn't take a salary. I don't know if he knew that he donated it. And so he decided he'd send his allowance to the president. And I love stories like that. And look, I wish we could look at it and say, boy, this is the new backdrop of youth. They're now being taught to appreciate the president, and schools all over the nation are saying, welcome President Trump, and they've got his picture up, and they're talking about what a great job he's doing. It's not happening. Now, you should be demanding it, but here's the thing. You guys that are listening to me, you're not in the schools that need it the most. I mean, that's just the facts. Until we can get beyond this echo chamber that we have of conservatism and figure out a way to get over to the other side, these kids are going to remain in this conveyor belt of ignorance. Now, the way you break it up is what we did on November the 8th, 2016. We changed from an incompetent community organizer who never should have been president to a competent person who will ultimately change. We cut the cord a little bit, but I won't tell you that we started our own conveyor belt of sanity. So we disrupted it. We disrupted the ability for the manufacturing process of liberalism, leftism, to continue keeping kids in idol worship of Barack Obama and the left, but we still haven't started our own manufacturing process. And I think that's what we've got to focus on. So I'd love to tell you this kid's story is more than anecdotal. It's kind of like my son. Now, the kids that I'm finding here in Arizona tend to be a lot more in tune with the president. You'll find, like, my son came back, he says, Dad, almost everybody in Arizona at the school is a Trump supporter. Yay. But it's a district where, it's heavily Republican, blah, blah, blah. So, and even with that, you can still see where there's still some leftist ideas when he talks about what these kids say. They support Trump, but they don't know, they still haven't figured out what conservatism means. And I think that's part of our duty, is to define conservatism in such a way that it cannot be, you can't twist it any longer. I tell people, look, what is it to be, how can you possibly not sell conservatism over liberalism? Just as an example, I think about my life of going out and partying when I was a kid, and I've always been conservative. But sure, I was a kid. I wanted to go out. I wanted to get the fake ID and sneak into the bar. I wanted to drink early. I smoked cigarettes. I did things that I probably wouldn't have, they told me, don't do it. Oh, I'm going to try that. I didn't do any drugs, thankfully, because I just didn't want to be strung out. But we did it all. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't get stinking drunk. I didn't lose my sensibilities and not wake up places and not know where I was. I didn't drink and drive. I didn't do a lot of the things that these other kids do and that give them regrets. So, as I say all the time, we are the same people, conservatives and leftists. We're the same. The only difference is we hold ourselves to some level of accountability, thinking a little further into the future. We got to teach that to these kids.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.